In this video, we're gonna install Python and then configure VS Code and run a quick program to see how the code works. First, you head over to python.org downloads and you download Python install manager, and after finishing downloading you should run the program and it will ask you to install the Python program that you have downloaded, and you just press Y, whatever it asks you. I have it already installed before, so I don't have a fresh Windows copy, so that's why I didn't get any prompt that I wanna install something new or whatever. Anyway, I pressed Y like as yes. It asked me, do you wanna open the installed apps? This isn't important, but this one is very important. When you add the command to the path, it will be easier for us to run programs through the terminal. And now, this one isn't very important, but you can open it and see for yourself if you wanna some help. Install it. If you had any problem, you can check this page. It has very good information on Python and how to configure your Python environment, which we are going to talk about later in the course. So now let's open Visual Studio Code. Installing it is very easy, so I'm not gonna go through it. And when you first start out, if you have a fresh install of Visual Studio Code, you should install this extension called Python. And you can install all the verified ones. I think they are all helpful, but they are not mandatory. Like for example, autopip8. It formats your document, your file automatically, so it's not as important. But what you need first is this one only, the Python one, and it might install several ones. And after installing this extension, we should open a project. If we click here on this tab and then click open folder, we can create a new folder called Python as an example. And here every file we create, it's gonna be saved in that folder. So now we can just create main.py, and in main.py we can just enter print. That's our first program. We're gonna follow the same pattern that everyone uses, which is print hello world. How you open a terminal in Visual Studio Code is through clicking on terminal here up and then new terminal. I already opened it using a shortcut. The shortcut is here. It depends on your keyboard. But anyway, since we have opened a terminal, we can just write down py and then main.py, and now you have the printout here, and that's your first program. And in Python, when you want to print a statement like when you want to print something in the console, you use the print function. We're gonna go later into what a function is. And Python doesn't really have any data types. So if you enter p equals to and then print p, generally in programming we have variables. A variable is something when you assign something to something, when you want to store something inside a variable. So a variable holds data inside it. So if you want to declare a variable, we say as an example data is something. So what is data? It depends on your needs, on your program needs. Let's say now we have a program that wanna calculate the sum of two numbers. So to be able to do that is you first declare a variable called data as an example, and it has like 10 stored inside it, and we have another variable. We named it p, and it's gonna be 2. The data inside it is 2, and we can watch here how it works. Let me add a breakpoint. This is a breakpoint. This is when you want to debug your program, you can set breakpoints here, and it will stop from running the whole program until you tell it to run. And it told me that it needs to choose a Python version or Python interpreter. And now we have ran the program, and now the program has stopped here. and we can tell it to step over, and now you can see in the tab here that data has 10 inside it. And now we have p as 2, p inside p is 2, and then we have print p, which is gonna print the number 2. And this one is from the program itself. I don't know why it does this thing, but we're gonna add an empty print so we can see the next line. And in Python, we can just print the sum of those two numbers. So the program runs here, print, and then it runs this one, and then it prints, it sees that you have stored a data, you have stored the number 10 in the data variable, and you have stored, now when we step over, you have stored 2 inside p. And now you want to print the sum of those numbers, and it's 12. And that's how it works so far. And you can change the number, you can change the data from number to a string. A string is basically letters. If you want to store letters like letter or words, letters, words, whatever. And now you get an error, and as you could see that we can't increment a number with a string. If we put a breakpoint here, we can see what's happening. So now, so far the data was 10 and p is 2, and then we have changed data to the letter word, the value of it. And now it is word, so now we wanna add it to word, which doesn't make any sense. And now we get an error. And we can fix this very easily by doing this. So now we have two strings. We can see here it's a string. The type of p is string, str, which is a string. And when we step, we have 2 and word, and when we add them together, they are gonna be 2 word like this. And so far, that's how in programming we have what we are gonna learn about is the float one, which is when we add a decimal to a number. If we add a breakpoint here, we can see that the type of it is float because we added a dot like 10.0, and we have. So in other programming languages, some of these names are already reserved, so you can't really use float or int to declare something, to use it as a variable naming. So this isn't a good naming convention in other programming languages. I'm just doing it here so we can understand what's happening. And here I'm printing the type of each variable. And when we step over, we can see that this variable is float. As we can see here, it's float. And the next one is integer, int. And the next one is string, str. And those are the variables in Python. Next, we should learn what a function is. When we want to declare a function, we do it like this way in Python. So a function is basically a code block that you want to reuse. They are very useful because they are very reusable. We can use them everywhere in our code file as an example, or we can use them in other coding files. Let's say if we have like p equals 1, and then we have like a equals 1 and then b equals 2, and we want to do an operation, let's say a plus b, and we want to store them somewhere. So we're going to use c equals a plus b, and then we want to print c. So now what if we want to reuse it somewhere else? We want to do multiple operations on different variables. In Python, we can declare variables after the function, and they will be visible inside this function, even if it's declared before. Some programming languages will complain that you are using a and b before declarations. But in Python, it doesn't matter. We can declare the variables here, and the function will not really complain. So this is an example how we use a function to print the sum of two numbers. So first we have a and b, and then we call the function. When we call the function, it will print a plus b, which are those two, and it will print for us 3. In functions, we should return something instead of printing something inside it. So a clean way to use functions is to return the result you want to do. So let's, in this example, example, we have a and b already declared, and we just want to add them together. So instead of using print, we use return. The function will return a and b, but notice that when you call it this way, nothing will happen, because you need to print. You need to either store the result somewhere. Let's say if we declare a new variable called c, and it's gonna store the result of the sum, and then we print c. And now when we run the program, it will print the number 3, because that's where we store the result of the sum. And as you can see here in the annotation, you can see that the return type is integer, because it knows that we have two variables are integers, and we're just adding them together and returning the value, the result, returning the addition of a and b. And yeah, this is how it basically works. What if we wanna like make it more dynamic, so we can, maybe I wanna change a to 3 and this one to 5 in different ways, in different areas in the program. So what you need to do every time, you should do this: a equals 4 as an example, and b equals 6. And then you have to do this again. You have to store the result again and print it. And this is one way of doing it, and it's gonna work. As we can see that it worked. This one is 8 and the next one is 10, but this is not very clean way to do it. So what we need to do, there are something called a parameter in functions. Each function can take as many parameters as possible. So now we have just added 2 parameters for this function. It's called a and b, and instead of, we can keep it this way, we can keep a and b here, and we can just pass them in function, and we can pass them again here in the function, and it still works the same way. Still works, but there is another way. You can do this way. You can just pass in 3 and 5, and you can delete those, and we can just add 1, 2 as an example. And it's not a very good idea to reuse the same variable type, the variable name. It's not a very clean way of doing it, but it might save some memory. I'm not sure. Anyway, after running it, we can see that we have 2 variables, d and c. One is 8, the other one is 3.